Welcome everybody to our scary IC topic chats. It's so scary I wore a blue hat. So we were originally going to do it as 5.5 scary things to scare you about independent consultant, but we came up with 6.5. So I updated the title. Anyway, today is October 28th. We're a couple days before Halloween. I'm here in Edwardsville, Illinois, which is abbreviated to Evil. And we take Halloween very seriously in Edwardsville. We have the hugest, at least it's rumored to be the largest Halloween parade on Halloween, so that will be this Sunday. The whole town shuts down, and right in front of my office here, there'll be about 1,000 kids clamoring for candy, and there'll be a parade and the whole bit. Our school colors are orange and black, and nobody has yet admitted that this is all connected. So orange and black, evil, large Halloween parade. So what do you know? So that is who we are, and that's what we've got going on today. Well, we are a panel. It's not about me. It's actually about the panel. It's Bonnie Blarcom, Susan Wolf, and Kirk Nestis, who are with us today, and they have each identified a couple of items each that they're going to discuss that should scare you about being in independent consulting. Now, Kirk kind of knows. I love it. So anyway, what the theme behind this and the history behind this, you are starting to scare me, clowns. Kirk and I were talking probably, I don't know, it was March or sometime in the spring. And we were talking about his session that he was going to do over the summer. And he says, we should get real and talk about some things that really scare people. And I said, that's a fantastic idea. That's an idea for a theme. And so let's do something like that for Halloween. So he did do his session on costing and different things around actually, I don't remember the specifics of what you did, Kirk. I apologize, but I decided to make this into a theme for all of us. So anyhow, Lenore, I'm going to start the closed captioning in just a second here because everybody won't be able to hear, or you won't be able to see what's going on with the PowerPoint in a second. Anyhow, let's get started. And I think we're going to start with Bonnie, and she's got the first one. The witchy dry spells.
Yes. One of the scary parts of being an independent consultant is not having billable work. For me, I aim to work at least 40 hours a week, but I'd love to have 100% of that time billable to clients. And I find that that's not always the case. There are dry spells between when I see an announcement for an opportunity and when I'm actually starting to work. And over the last 3 years, I have found the average is 4 to 8 months between an advertisement and when I'm able to start billing for that work. In 2019, there was an advertisement in March. I put in an application in April. I was selected I had interviews in June. In July, I was selected, but then, and I'll talk about that in a moment, was the onboarding, which was substantial. But to focus on the time between when I am searching out opportunities and when I'm actually working, it has been 4 to 8 months. And I used to focus all my time on my contract, the current contract I had, and now I have shifted to daily, looking at what requests I get to apply for subsequent work. Another aspect of a scary part, or to rephrase it more positive, is the enormous amount of effort I went through for one contract. And that was a whole list that they provided me. Not only did I had to form a legal corporation or a legal entity, I needed to create a specific website for that business. I needed to complete a 409 form. I had to show proof of work authorization in the US, although born US citizen. I had to certify that I had insurance for my business of a general liability coverage. I had to show invoices or agreements from two or three other clients. And then I had to link all this to my website. So a substantial amount of work to try and start a contract, but it is a great contract, and I'm very pleased to have that work. So the scary part is working between contracts. A way to avoid it is not to wait to the end of the contract to look for more opportunities, and to be well organized in the filing of your documents, so you can use documents used previously to submit to any new organization. You've got a variety of masks, Matt.
Yeah, that is a scary thing. I had to, anyhow, no, this is a real situation for a lot of us, and it's one of the disadvantages to getting started. I know a lot of us think about when we first get started, we may get started as a side hustle, as something that we're doing during a full-time job, and so that makes it possible. But I think that for once you get rolling, you need to maintain that revenue stability. And so one of the ways a lot of us do that is we take on these multi-year projects. So we have that as a base to work from, and then we can do other projects that are bigger or more exciting. But yeah, there's always that lag. I know with NSF, US Department of Education, and our Department of Defense grant, all of them take a while. All right, let's go on to the next one. I think the next one is for Kirk.
Yeah, so it didn't take me but just a minute or two to realize, reflecting back on almost 20 years of this kind of work, the single scariest word for me when I'm starting to work with a client is engagement. And it's something about this particular word, and it transcends education programs I've evaluated in K-12 and higher ed. Social services programs, all kinds of different interventions out there. The point at which someone says, oh yeah, we want to measure engagement, I know I am in for a miserable time. And that word is a particular problem because people use it like everybody knows what it is. And the simple fact of the matter is that there's almost no consensus, even among small groups of project managers in the same piece of work, as to exactly what the heck engagement looks like and how you measure it. Some people think that it is something that they do. I am going to engage families to be more involved in their children's educations. Some people think of it as an outcome at something that should be measured. I've actually used different structures and different conceptual models to define engagement, looking at different dimensions. So there's cognitive engagement, there's physical engagement, there's different ways you can attack this. The underlying thing to the bigger thing that we're scared of ultimately comes down to a lack of definition of terms and a lack of clarity of the things that we're supposed to be measuring. And I'm going through this right now with two separate clients on two entirely different projects and trying to force them to actually commit to a single definition of something so I can make sure that we're measuring the thing they have in their heads. The construct is defined, the indicators are clear, and everybody's on the same page, is burning up an inordinate amount of time that may or may not have been effectively budgeted for. So for me, it's new engagement, but for others of you, it may be different specific terms that are examples of that problem.
I put on my engagement hat for you. It's pretty scary. All right, let's go to Susan. She's next.
Mickey Mouse or King?
It's a little bit of both, I think. I don't know. I went to the kids' play bin and just started pulling things out. So I'm not really sure what I've even got next. Okay, Susan, take it away with the dishonest, no promise Thomas.
Okay, this refers to the unreasonable and the dishonest clients. The ones who agree with everything proposed up front. You meet with them, you talk about the scope of work, you have that initial meeting, and they're all like, yes, yes. And I think especially since one thing I make clear in every meeting is I'm a community psychologist, and I make clear to them that you may be hiring me, but I represent the people who are participating in your program. That is, so I will be speaking predominantly for them. And they're like, oh, this is wonderful. We think this is great. But then as you do your work and then as you share results with them, they don't like it. I haven't had too many of them. I'm happy to report, but when I do, they really make me tired, because you share something with them and they want to argue with you and, oh, take that out of there. No, we don't. It's like whatever you do, they're unhappy or they want something different. They might want to build an evaluation that's not possible given their resources and capabilities. Well, I read this article where they did this. Yeah, but that costs this much. You only have this much money. Or they want you to report or use findings in a way that stretches the truth. One client I had wanted me to create an infographic with them that they could use to promote their program. The problem was I went in and I did an intensive literature search, and there was absolutely no research or any other evidence to support what they wanted to say. They wanted me to say that if they do this, it leads to this and results in that. And there is absolutely no evidence out there. I searched every database possible. And at that time, I had library privileges at the university as well. So I had to try and tell her that I can't do that infographic that you want me to do because there's absolutely no evidence to support the statements you want me to make. Well, they ghosted me after that. I got paid for every bit of work I've done. And since then they've ghosted me. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I didn't want to work with you anyways. As long as I got paid for what I did, I was good. The other is someone that when you give the results out, they attack you and your methods. Like, oh, well, you're not a very good evaluator if that's what you found. I had a high-level official at a government agency one time try to claim that my statistical analyses were done wrong. So he comes in and he sits up and he's trying to intimidate me. He goes, well, I teach statistics. And I sat there and looked him in the eye and I said, so do I. And that kind of shut that conversation right down. But that's what I mean about these kind of unrealistic people who want to argue, who don't want to work with you collaboratively and professionally, but want to push an agenda out at you that you just cannot support or that makes you uncomfortable because it's the wrong thing to do. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, and related to that are a couple of things. The clients who hire you with the intent, and it sounds like this is similar to what happened to you, is they hire you with the intention for you to find a specific thing that they've already decided you should find, and so that's like the statistics conversation and about methodology. Well, of course, you're going to find X, Y, and Z. And another one you see is, and these are completely dishonest people who encourage you to respond to an RFP when they have absolutely no intention of funding you. And we talk about this from time to time, where you have, those folks where, and of course, they're very, very friendly at the front end because they need their three, Kurt, you have a term for this, I forget what it is, but where they need their three, or they're two losers, I think is what I should call it, right, Kurt?
Right, yep. They need two losers because they've already picked the one winner.
Yes, that's a bad one. The other one that I've also struggled with is, the worst is one time they wanted me to change some of the results that we'd written. And this was like a $400,000 project. And we refused, so they started bullying us. And so we walked away from it. We just decided it wasn't worth it. Well, last week I learned that the bullying was purposeful because their internal learning officer had decided she wanted to do the evaluation. So they purposefully bullied us to get us to quit so that she could take it over. And I was shocked to hear that. I was like, are you kidding me? So anyways, yeah. Sometimes
Thank you for your integrity, Susan. I have found that to be the case also, but I'm glad you were paid for what you did before you were ghosted. I found that people are unwilling to pay unless I change my view. And to get paid, I make it something that I'm willing to support, but it's so general and so lack of specificity that it doesn't really support what they want.
Yeah, that's where it gets really difficult. I think I'm annoying enough that they just pay me to get rid of me.
I've also come back and said, I'm willing to draft that for you for your authorship, and I will stamp it directed writing. So, but I refuse to put my name to that opinion.
Yeah, you have to hold strong. And if you don't get paid, like I say, I either annoy them enough or threaten a legal action against them that, you have a contract, a legally binding contract. But that's a matter of like, what line can you go up to? And if they'll at least accept that line that you're willing to go up to. All right, I'll let the next scared consultant.
All right, let's see. I think this one is for Kirk.
Yeah, so the dynamic here is a little different. This is what I call the scope creep. In fact, the firm I used to run up in New York, the creep actually became a verb, as in we'd have a staff meeting and someone would be shaking, project manager would be shaking her head, and she'd say, "Oh man, they're creeping me really bad on this project," and it conjures, somebody looking in your window, but it's about incremental additions to the work that ultimately add up to threatening the profitability of an entire contract. And it can be very insidious. Some people are, did I say that right? Insidious. Some people are better at it than others. Some people are more inclined to creep. Some will apologize, but they'll creep anyway. And basically what they do is they throw you little things like, you know what, I'm doing this proposal. Can you just give me a little graphic output of those data that I can stick in that report? And we're always inclined, I think, because we want to be, provide good customer service. We're always inclined to try and be helpful, but you let them creep once and pretty soon they're creeping all over you. So I've developed a strategy that I've actually trained folks in this business how to use in workshops, where the answer always starts with the word yes. And then there's a comma, and then there's the conditions under which that can work. So when they say, can you ... I say, yeah, would you like me to write up a quote for that additional work? And 8 times out of 10, they'll go, well, no, maybe we don't need that. But the interesting thing is that about 20% of the time, it seems like they will actually go to their pocketbook and drag out some additional dough to pay for the thing because they actually do want it. So it's a no-lose kind of a proposition to always say yes, but always say yes conditional to terms that you can accept without going broke. And Matt, to your earlier point about my last talk, it was about partially how to write a scope of work so that it's tight enough that you don't get creeped or it's relatively creep resistant. Oh, that's creepy.
I'm having too much fun with this. JP, did you have something you wanted to say? You popped in, I didn't know.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I was playing with my kitty. I had a situation like this yesterday, exactly what Kirk was saying. A client a year ago asked me for some maps, to create some maps in GIS. Okay, so, and she wanted to export these files. There were 8 specific maps into a different formatting that I'm not familiar with. So, we're busy, right? Now, my philosophy, as Kirk mentioned, is always say yes. And then I tested first, okay, how long will it take me just to export one of the maps into these 2 different formats? And then, okay, this is going to take me maybe 90 minutes. And I did it. I keep my clients happy, because eventually this is going to be a new contract next year. They need to update these maps anyway in the future. So even though it's extra work, I take it's 5% of my time. I can do it and I don't bill them. Maybe it's wrong, but I can, I have plenty of work, and it has worked for me in the last 15 years doing this, little things, and just move forward. And eventually they call me back, and I'm then very lucky doing that, of this kind of relationships. I live in a small town. I know personally my clients, and I try to see them. I used to see them on very frequently, face to face, by email, phone calls. So I have this very strong relationship. For me, this is how I build my professional work with my clients. Most of the time, they know me for many years, and I want to keep that good relationship because they have been very fair with me. And second, they're nice people. I don't work with jerks. Most of my clients are great people. So I'm flexible in that way. But I get exactly what Kirk was saying. If it goes beyond the scope of work, originally that was, in the contract, you had to put some limits. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, I'm glad you popped in, JP, because it's always nice to hear. It's kind of as a chat that we can talk a little bit about this. This isn't just a presentation. So anybody, we have time. We have lots of time. Anybody wants to pop in and give a little conversation about this? Let's see. I think Susan, you're up next. The deadline, the red line deadline, red line.
I think one of the things that will keep me up at night is missing a deadline. To me, that is like when I am down to the wire on something and may have to ask for an extension or something, I darn near break out in hives. I mean, it just really makes me anxious because when you think about it, deadlines are when your client says they needed this thing. Sometimes they're hard deadlines because they have reports that they have to submit. Other times it's just an agreed upon thing. But missing a deadline is about your professionalism. It's about your integrity. It's about honoring your word. And those qualities are so heavily ingrained in who I am that when I have to depart from them, it makes me lose sleep. So that is, like I say, one of those things that keeps me up at night sometimes. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, I don't know. It does keep me up. That's all. I don't know how much more there is to say about that one.
Now, so I mean, I would say for most people who are worried about deadlines, they're setting up a pretty good calendar of activity in advance so that there's no, I mean, that's kind of like the big idea. Now, obviously things happen and we're in the process of collecting data, and people are late with getting you data. I mean, I guess as your calendar is changing due to things unrelated to your activity, you need to update it with your clients. So that's what I would suggest to other people. I mean, is that how you would worry about that? Or is this just deadlines that are out there that are coming that because it's an internal thing, or is this external? How do you think about that?
Well, when I'm late for a deadline, it's usually because something happened with the client that delayed data collection. And so the minute I know that it might affect it, that's when I'll start saying things like, well, you didn't start this until here, and our reporting deadline is here. For me to write you a good quality report, I need at least X amount of time. So can we extend that deadline? So sometimes you can head it off. But every now and then you start working on a report and it turns out bigger, or something comes up that makes it a little more challenging than maybe you thought it would be. Or something comes up, you get sick. The one time during the middle of a really super busy time, I fell and hurt myself and had to spend the day in bed. That was a whole lost day. And sometimes when you're working on tight deadlines or having multiple things, you know, things pile up sometimes. And if you hurt and injure yourself or get sick in the middle of one of those times when you really had planned to just hunker down and get stuff done, that can also be a problem. So if I get sick, I call and I let the client know, you know, I had a couple of days sick or I hurt myself, and that has caused me, you know, and hope that they will give me some grace over those kinds of things.
Another strategy, back to, if I might share, is when you write the scope of work, make the due date not a calendar date, but what I call a minus days date, where you will provide them with the report 60 days after they provide you with the data, or whatever an appropriate period is. And just let them know as their due date for the data elapses and starts adding plus days, then they're shoving your due date further out into the future.
Well, that's just cool, Kirk. I'm going to remember that trick. That is a good one. I've never thought of that. It's always been dates, but yeah, Patricia, if they get the data late to me, that's a good way too of saying, well, you know, the timeline for this project and the due dates were based on you getting the data to me by this date. Since I just got it, could I have an extra blah, blah, blah? Because, you know, letting them know that these timelines that you computed were based on something, not just arbitrary. That it really does take this long to analyze data and write a report.
At which point they
So,
say, no, we have to have it. And they put on their pouty face and they invoke the funder. And then, like happened to me a couple months back, you send them the final report as an email attachment, you get an out of office reply that they're on vacation for a week.
that's what curses are for. You just put a curse on them. Just
That was,
kidding.
I think that was the dry spell, right? No, that was the witchy dry spells, right? All right. I mean, obviously, the other thing to remember with all this is build lots of buffer time into your planning. So if you think it takes you a week to write something, you know, indicate it's going to take 2 weeks, even if, so that you have that buffer. So you want to build some things, some time.
That's my favorite strategy, is always overestimate so that I get things done earlier than they expected. I do that too, but also again, that comes in handy if you do have an injury or an illness or something. It buys you that buffer time. Or if you just end up with something coming up, I mean, life happens, projects happen, and most of us are juggling more than one project at a time as well, so.
And Tom Clark, who's joining us, I worked with him a long time ago. We've known each other for several years. Tom's based out of Springfield, Illinois, just an hour and a half north of me. Sometimes, I guess he's also sometimes in Fort Lauderdale, but anyway, he added an article about the panic monster, which was not one of our 6.5 today. So that, you know, we got an addition. Did you want to discuss that, Tom?
Sure, yeah, it's from a TED Ed talk. Basically, and this doesn't really apply to many evaluators, but the panic at the end does, because often it's not your own fault. You weren't obeying the instant gratification monkey and watching YouTube videos and stuff all day, but for some reason, you know, getting close to the deadline, the panic monster starts going off in your head. And that's what keeps you sleepless. And also, if you're maybe somebody who's naturally a little bit of a procrastinator, it kind of helps you get back on track. So it is a Halloween themed idea.
I love it. Tom, we'll include you with our panel next year for Halloween. How's that? So I got a feeling you got a couple.
Yeah.
You used several.
I did do a Halloween talk. I believe it was 2004 about engagement. I was trying to engage the client staff. So I did a Halloween thing where, like when we talked about stakeholders, and that like everybody's like going to sleep. I say, better to be a stakeholder than a stake receiver. It was hard to dig that up, though. I think I don't have that file anymore, but sure. So I think this is great that you're trying to engage evaluators in Halloween through this kind of a themed event and all of your funny hats.
I got a couple more. All right. Next one is the don't touch it budget. Susan, I think this is yours.
Don't think so.
Well, actually, that's Kirk.
Kirk's. I'm sorry, Kirk, I forgot. I got back.
If it's about money, it's almost always about me, Matt. You know that. So this is about general crimes against budgets. And they can take a number of forms. And this isn't the subtlety of creep. This is where basically the slasher movie at the end of the thing where they come after you with the knife and you got to go toe to toe and it's live or die. And it's where folks at some point in the whole engagement process, from the RFP to the actual completion of the work, make some very fundamental decision about the budget that can be essentially fatal to the work. And it can happen at any point. I've had clients that got funded by National Science Foundation come back to me and say, oh yeah, we got the project, but the program officer said that there's a rule that the evaluation can only be 5% or 8% or 10% or some other stupid magic number of the total budget for the project. At which point I said, that's great. Which work do you want me to take out in order to get to that target? And they just don't understand that the work and the dollars are supposed to correspond in some very fundamental way. We lost a project, the gig that I used to run, we lost a project that we proposed to what was essentially our local Chamber of Commerce. And it was right in our wheelhouse. It was workforce development. We'd done a whole ton of work in that area. We're eminently qualified. The geographic area that they were supposed to be targeting was literally where our office was located. So it was our neighbors that were going to be in this program, workforce development program. We wrote the proposal. We didn't get it. And as I always do, I got in touch and said, can you give us feedback and let us know what we can do to do better next time? And they said, oh, well, you were just too expensive. I said, well, was the total amount or what was the problem? I said, no, your hourly rates were too high. And so I innocently asked, what kind of hourly rate would you expect to pay for research and evaluation of this type? The answer was, oh, something $20 to $25 an hour. And this was, let's be clear, we were a member of this organization. This was our local chamber. And I went back to them and I pretty much unleashed on them because it's like, you want me to keep business here in Syracuse, New York, and you're telling me that the retail price for work that's being completed by master's and PhD trained folks is $20 to $25 an hour. And what I discovered was the person that had won the grant was an ex-faculty member of a local university who'd opened a evaluation shop and was basically using grad students and contractors, violating all kinds of labor laws in the state to do the work and bidding it out at $20 to $25 an hour. So it's just fundamental things like that we should not have to deal with out in the big scary world, Halloween or otherwise, about budgets. So, they also sometimes do it at the end. We had a current client, come back to us and say, we'd like to get rid of these 3 reports and take them off of the scope of work, and we're going to write an amendment to cut $10,000 out of the project. Well, the only problem was we had already done all the templates, done all of the analysis, put it all together. It was all web-based analysis tools that we use. So we were getting economies of scale that were supposed to translate into doing multiple iterations of the reports. And they went through and basically said, we take out 1/3 of the reports, we just take out 1/3 of the reporting budget, ignoring the fact that we'd front loaded all of the labor to put all that together. So we're in negotiation with them for how we fix that problem. Budget's bad.
Yeah, no, I think that happens a lot. You see that the other situation is where you negotiate a contract or a budget for a proposal, and the proposal goes in and they get funded, and they get funded for the amount for you, and then they have second thoughts about how much they want to pay you. And I remember thinking, what part of the budget that we approved, that was approved by your program officer, don't you understand? And I've had this conversation. One of my favorite clients who I've been working with for several years, we have a very wonderful, productive relationship. Our first interaction was like that. He looked at it and goes, "What are we paying you all this for?" And I'm like, "You're not. They are. You got the award. I helped you write the grant. Let's move forward." But these are the things that happen. All right, let's see. We got another one from Susan. And by the way, Susan and Kirk, I've lost my ability to see the chat box. If anything's popping up in there, I'm going to need your help with that. It happens when I have the closed captioning on. And I think this is Susan's, the knife and the life strife.
Yeah, this is my Paris Hilton costume. By the way. You haven't advanced the slides, Matt. So anyways, talking about the knife in the life strife. And Jessica Metcalf, who talked about work-life balance at our Meet the Pros, probably should become my consultant, because one of the things that challenges me also is maintaining work-life balance. I often end up with just too much work to do, and that's the result of me having a hard time turning projects down, because everything looks fun. Things keep coming along that look fun. And it's like, oh my God, I must say no. And I'm getting better at it, at saying no to projects. But sometimes there's a client that I really want to work with, that maybe an opportunity comes along, like a foundation approaches me or something like that. And it's like, oh, darn, I've wanted to work with this foundation forever. And here they are knocking on my door. How do I say no to that? Or sometimes one project starts before another one ends. And you know how that goes. You know, you end up with that, just too much on your plate. So that means that you end up working maybe Saturdays and Sundays when you'd really rather be out playing or hanging out or something. But that is another one of my nightmares, is that idea that I want to do the work because, like Saturday I got up and I came into my office and I sat down and I started working on a report. I planned on taking the day off, but then on Friday I left this report and I was enjoying. There's nothing better than quiet time, so you can sit and design your report. And so I started working it on Saturday, not thinking of it as work, but thinking of it as something enjoyable, quiet activity to do before something that I had scheduled started. So that kind of finding work-life balance is something I'm really trying to get a grip on, so that I have weekends off and don't keep working on weekends, because I need time to recharge, but also time to do fun things. So that is my other big fear, is that I just will not be able to get that balance going on. I think that's all there is to say about that as well. And just like I say, I like working sometimes. I like it enough that it feels like a hobby.
Yeah, if you do what you enjoy, then you'll never have to work another day of the rest of your life. Isn't that what they say? Are you guys able to see the slides now? Like I said, when I use closed captioning, things start shutting down for some reason. It's something about this.
Yeah, they aren't advancing. It's still on the deadline red line.
Oh, that's so weird. Okay.
Yeah.
It's advancing on my computer. Oh, well, like I said, it has something to do with this Zoom application when we're using closed captioning. I'm happy to use closed captioning. Anyhow, no, I have a great slide that I'm looking at that you guys can't see. Does anybody have any things that they want to contribute that we didn't think about that are scary things? Again, the whole intent of all this is to kind of provide, not only scare one another, but particularly for our new independent consultants who are getting into this, what are the things they ought to know? And that's what this whole thing was about. So feel free to chime in. If you put it in the chat, I'm going to rely on Kirk or Susan to read that because my chat stopped working as well.
You might as well give up on the slides. Then we can see each other. There we go. What keeps you up at night?
My stuff right now, most of the stuff that keeps me up at night now has most to do with just setting in motion projects that will continue to sustain my business and all the employees and the people that I want to continue hiring. And so that's exciting. It's a little bit different than where I was 10 years ago, where I was just trying to find enough to keep me going. But and then what, you know, this really, I'm becoming more and more like Kirk, I think, because I'm thinking about my budget all the time, right? And to what degree are we overworking on certain projects? Are we creeping? Are my clients creeping me out? Because we're pretty flexible with our scope creep, but probably too flexible, because I like the idea of doing a little bit of extra work with the idea that we're over serving as long as we have the time available. But that's the stuff that keeps me up at night, just thinking about, are we committing too many resources to our projects, and are we putting enough in the hopper for down the road? As we were talking, as Bonnie was saying at the very beginning, do I have enough things that will hopefully get funded 6 months from now to keep everybody happy for years to come? So that's what scares me. Anybody else want to share?
For me, it was the word incremental in Kirk's scope creep. You get asked to do a little bit this month. And then the next time around, oh, there it is again. You did it last time. And then over the life of the project, it just really starts adding up. Or you've done that before. Can you do this a little bit more? And so it's the incremental part of it that gets to us.
Classic creep, Kurt.
I had the opposite with one client. They pay me monthly for a yearly amount, and they got a new manager, and I had to go to them and say, look, you need to use me. I'm getting paid. You have to use me and give me, you know, let's talk about things I can do for you. So I had scope uncreep. We worked that out now.
And the problem was what?
He had no idea what I could do for them. He took over management of the program and knew they had an evaluator out there, but again, it was, he didn't have any idea of the things that I was doing and could be doing and should be doing. So I had to tell him, no, when you start working on these things, you have to engage me there. So, but yeah, now we have monthly meetings set up and we're doing well. One of the things though is, and this is keeping me up at night, we cannot get data from the state of Texas. The health department is stonewalling, and we've got somebody at a state university who is requesting the data and who will do all the analyses, who has the IRBs and everything in place, and they still won't. Well, it's been 2 years now, and every time she requests, a new person came in or they changed the procedure or something, but Texas is holding on to data and not. Kurt, you're nodding.
Don't even get me started talking about my state.
Yeah, this is data they don't want. I think they don't want to release, and they don't want people seeing the state of things.
Illinois is the same way.
Wow. Yeah. That's keeping us
Tom
up.
will tell you. Tom and I both know that.
Yeah, well, Susan and Matt, I just came across the situation. I was with a group of evaluators applying for a state board of education grant. And then we ran up against this thing that you could only the person who was, or organization who was applying for the application could only have 20% subcontracting, which meant that as a team of evaluators, we could not do our independent consultant thing. the merry band of pirates is what the main person said. So is that something you run into with state education and just state evaluations in general? Has anyone else run into some of a limit on subcontracting, basically to drive things to universities and large evaluation firms? Anybody else had that issue?
I've seen RFPs with those requirements too. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what they're doing more and more of.
I got the sense it was in the general code too. I have a friend in revenue who's was kind of helping me look at that. I'm in Springfield, where all the lobbyists and stuff live. So I went to visit him, and he was also kind of, it's just kind of a new thing. Hopefully it's not a trend, because it could impact independent consultants, at least in terms of state work.
Is there a chance that that was a procurement rule, that if they busted a particular cap, then it had to go out and be formally bid, and they just didn't want to go to that extent?
No, it was going to be a large evaluation based upon the scope of the project, which was a state tax credit program called Invest in Kids, which is a very fuzzy evaluation RFP. And then finally, after that question was asked, we just withdrew. We didn't even submit. So I had never encountered that before and wondered if anybody else had. And Susan, you've heard of that, but it's it's kind of like that creepy thing in the background for independent consultants, if that becomes a common practice.
Well, what happened with these data is that they made clear that an independent consultant cannot work with the data at all. So so all these analyses were going to be done completely by a colleague of mine that's at it. She's a professor at a university, a state university. And she has a maternal child health equity lab at that university. And she's trying to get data on infant births and deaths and maternal death. And for 2 years now, they've keep doing things and now they're just not answering her emails at all about it. And she's gone through every formal process, and then they change the process and say, oh, we're sorry. So, what do we do with that? Because one of the deliverables on the state contract is to have those analyses done. And we've asked the project to go and ask them to do something about the data they have. And the state goes, oh, we thought that was these data. And I mean, there's just been one excuse after another. And the same for our fetal infant mortality review. There's a state law in place that allows the medical center to have those data. And they're stonewalling that too, despite the state law. So a lot of problems. House representative for help. This is Texas. I need not say more. Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming to an end with our conversation today. I think this has been a fun one. Encourage you guys to show up each week. We had a great week, and a big thanks again to Susan for everything she did last week for the Meet the Pros. That was a lot of work. We had 8 sessions. And by the way, all those sessions are out there on the YouTube channel if anybody wants to see any snippet of them. And I think they were all fantastic. I shared at least 4 of them with my staff around the administrative planning pieces. Those were great. And so we're thinking critically about how we could incorporate some of those ideas. Anyhow, next week, I believe I am doing timekeeping, and that's one of the core topics that we do. When I do a workshop, we haven't done a workshop in 2 years now, but when I do workshops, this would be one of the key lectures that I make sure is part of that. So I'm going to do that next week. So it's definitely one for our people new to independent consulting. I'll be talking about my experiences with Toggle in particular, and why you should be keeping your time. think in about a month from now, or I think 3 weeks, actually, we'll have another themed session, a panel on showing appreciation, and it'll be the week right before Thanksgiving. And so part of that conversation will be about giving gifts at the end of the year to your clients and finding ways to just, show appreciation to those who have done good things for you. And so I know Ann Price is going to be a part of that. And I think Kamala will be a part of that too. But anyway, we're still working on that. If anybody wants to join that panel, send me a note. Don't send me a chat right now because I can't receive it, but send me an email. That would be great. And with all that, I'm going to close everything down here, and we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks for joining me on this special, crazy, evil holiday. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.